So how do you start a school with only 20 students and then grow that school to almost 600 in under 20 years? Today we're going to hear a fascinating story from the founder of Trinity Classical Academy, Liz Caddow, and we're going to learn how starting your own school can make you feel a little like Indiana Jones. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Classical Academy podcast. This is our inaugural episode, our very first. It's going to be a podcast about firsts, about the first year of Trinity Classical Academy. I'm Dr. Keith Buhler. I am the one of the humanities faculty at Trinity Classical Academy here in Santa Clarita, California. And I'm going to be your host, your tour guide. We're going to be seeing the sights, the sounds, the smells, the magic of being a part of this amazing movement. In Trinity Classical Academy, our main business is educating, but why are we doing a podcast? Well, we want to open up the riches of classical Christian education to a broader community than just our students. Parents of our students, we're looking at you. I hear all the time that people want to go back to school or they wish they could have had this in school as a child. Well, guess what? You can have it even as an adult. We're all growing in this way. Alumni of the school who want to be connected and continue growing. Friends of our school, family of students and parents and so on that don't get to maybe enroll but want to know more about what we're doing. Our Santa Clarita neighbors and beyond, fellow educators in this movement. We want to talk and to dialogue with all of you and really learn together. But today, we're going to be talking with Liz Caddow, the founder and the head of school at Trinity Classical Academy. So excited to have you here, Liz. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Buhler. I'm glad to be here today.
We're so glad to have you on our first podcast, and I want to talk to you about firsts. Trinity is now entering its 19th year of students, 20th year, I guess, of existence, because you had to, plan for a year. How would you say that Trinity grew to be from a little startup with a few families to a flagship school here on the West Coast in the classical Christian movement?
Thank you. That's a great question. When I think of that question, I just know that the Lord has been very gracious to our school. I believe that He must have wanted something like this here in crazy California. And when we started the idea, just wanted something more for our own children. At the time, we just had our son who was 18 months old, and I had gone through my master's in credentialing program at the University of Southern California, and through that process, realized, gosh, there's so much more. And this was 20 plus years ago, actually 27 years ago, that generation I thought was missing. I had thought there had to be more, and what would we do for our own children? And started teaching out in the local schools out in our area. And Wally and I started thinking and praying about what that could look like to start a school, and began researching and praying and investigating, and came across this model, the classical Christian model.
So you and your husband Wally had no prior experience with being entrepreneurs or starting schools. I mean, this was your first go?
Yes, this was our first go. My husband probably wondered what he had gotten himself into in regards to when we got married. He thought I would start teaching, we would live out here, and that's what we would do, and he would work professionally actually in the entertainment industry. Mm-hmm. And that's what was happening before we moved into starting the school. In fact, the day we just said we're putting this and committing it to prayer and really going for it, I was supposed to be starting my administrative credential at California State Northridge. Mm-hmm. And I called them and said, I'm not coming, I'm doing something else. We sold our house, and I started, we raised some support for a portion of what would be income for myself, because I had been working part-time, already teaching part-time at a local junior high. Mm-hmm. And we moved into a condo and just started doing the legwork.
Amazing. And so I heard a couple of really interesting things. One, you started with prayer. and that God already wanted this school to exist maybe before you knew that he wanted it to exist, right? And I think that that's something I've heard before, that these things, it's almost like being a parent where you do it whether or not you're worthy of the role. You know, God chose you to be that child's parent. And the other thing I heard was that you wanted more. And how many of our currently enrolled families, that's where it started. There's got to be something more. Or maybe parents who are out there who are currently uncovering that, they're realizing that there might be more, that there should be more. So you started the school, and how many families were there initially that you started with? Was it just you and a couple of others?
Right. Once we started pursuing, we found through a little research, actually, the Association of Classical Christian Schools, I had heard Douglas Wilson speaking on a radio show, James Dobson's radio show, and about this school he had started in Idaho and about this association, and there was a little notebook you could buy on how to start a school. So purchased it for $15, and it came in the mail, and started reading everything I could about classical Christian education, philosophy, marching through the steps of this little notebook, and started talking to people, started going to different churches, and we had put together a little proposal of what a school could look like using this model. And we started going to different churches and talking to them about this, and then people started saying, "Oh my gosh, I'm interested." And again, I really do think the Lord wanted something like that here. He happened to give us the idea and lay it upon our hearts, and then he's gone from there. We, in our first year, had 26 families, totaling 28 children.
Wow. Kindergarten,
first and second grade. We took 2 years. Once we started thinking through how this could look, we knew it would take at least 2 years. So we started it when Ian, our oldest, was 18 months. And, he had just turned 3, or was turning 3 when we, or 3.5, almost 4, I guess, when we started it, when we had our first class. And I spoke to almost every church in our valley for a place to hold us, and a little church off of 15th Street, Valencia Open Bible, was open to it. We confessed to them we weren't totally sure how we were going to pay for it initially. We weren't sure if we were going to have any students, but people started coming, and we started doing information meetings, what we call information meetings, at anywhere that people would let us. So we were at churches, we were at preschools, we were at a variety of places for a good year and a half doing these, what we called our dog and pony show.
Yeah, they used to call that hitting the pavement, right?
Yes,
for
we were,
salesmen.
at church on Sundays, and then a little team, people kind of started becoming a part. We had a little formation committee, and some of those families that were at the very one of the first meetings we had, laying out our vision, were part of our first graduating class. And John Brooks, our CFO, being one of those families. Amazing. The Howells, the Smiths, there's a variety of those families
that have stuck with the
that
school
stayed
from its genesis.
and finished.
So every school is unique in the sense that it's going to have kind of a personality to it, kind of have a spirit that grows the morale. What do you think is something that makes Trinity unique in terms of its mission, or the kind of teachers that you look for? Obviously the curriculum is going to be classical, but is there anything that you think stands out relative to other classical schools? Well,
I think one of the aspects that makes our school so unique is our people. Especially our faculty and staff, and those committed to the classical Christian model in particular. When we first started, we didn't really know where to look to find people, right, to work and try to do what we were doing. So it was a handful of years of reading and making sure we were learning from other schools, other sister schools that were ahead of us in their journey. And then we started learning out how to find people that could also teach and had a heart for what we were doing. So I think it's the people that are committed to this type of education. We've talked about this, that allows the human soul to flourish and grow in virtue and wisdom. What we talk about, purpose and courage, which is our mission, but makes for a kind of person who seeks those things, that kind of learner. And it's the whole journey, what they're learning, who's teaching them, what we say we're committed to, what we don't spend time learning is part of what makes our school unique as well.
What would be an example of something that we try to keep out?
Well, and in the sense of, make no mistake, we're making sure that our students in their journey understand all aspects of culture, what the world says about a specific, say, topic of controversy, what would be a Christian worldview perspective, what have the ancients said, all of it. But as part of the classical model specifically, we TK through sixth grade, very making sure that our students are extremely literate, that they understand grammar, that they're learning Latin, that they have a concept of the historical timeline and the beginning of ideas from ancient civilizations to present times, to then moving through the logic school and rhetoric school and that cycle repeating itself, to the great books, to formal logic, to 4 years of rhetoric. That is not happening anywhere. Modern education just started tossing those things out, 50, 60 years ago. And thus we see the results, and it's a shame. There's generations. That was the whole thing when I was doing my student teaching. And I thought, my goodness, these students, there's so much more they could know intellectually, spiritually, emotionally, just all of it. And that was, like I said, about 27 years ago when I was doing my student teaching out of college. So I just think that so grateful for what the scope and sequence of a classical Christian model does for students, for families, for those involved in it. I think it makes a distinct, different kind of learner, person, and that then impacts culture, who they're going to be as adults, who's around them, what they will feel called to.
Yeah. So, do you think that there? You mentioned something about controversial topics, and I know that one thing that I've noticed that's unique about Trinity is that there are so many different types of families from different backgrounds, ecclesially, different churches, and would you agree that we don't have to agree with something to read it? Like, say, something in the canon. We can read some Ovid, and there's some pretty gross parts of Ovid, or we can read some philosophers that we don't agree with. And there's almost like, I wonder if there's a spirit of being more willing to disagree peaceably and to understand where people are coming from. Would you say that's a kind of an element of the school?
I hope so, right? I hope so. I think we are hopefully training souls and thinkers to be able to engage in the conversation and not be afraid to ask questions or be afraid if someone's disagreeing with their thoughts or what they have to say. We certainly live in a time and culture that seems to be not the case. So how can we make sure we're raising up a generation that can engage in culture and not be afraid to ask questions, seek answers, and also how do we help our students and those in our community know how to do that and do it well, right? The good man speaking well, thinking well, and be an example to that and know how to do that and not break a relationship just because someone disagrees with them.
Yeah, that's a more important skill than any particular, mathematical or grammatical or skill. That's a life skill. It seems to me. If we could take that into life after school, that would be really helpful. We're going to transition out of segment 1. We are going to be returning with Liz Caddow, head of school and founder of Trinity Classical Academy, for segment 2, where we'll be talking about challenges that you've faced, that the school has faced, and what is next for a school like Trinity. So stay tuned.
Trinity Classical Academy, located in Santa Clarita, California, provides a rigorous college preparatory education drawing from the classical tradition with a distinctly Christian worldview. Trinity educates over 550 students from TK through 12th grade. To learn more about Trinity, please visit our website at TrinityClassicalAcademy.com.
So we're back with segment 2 with Mrs. Liz Caddow, the founder and head of school, and if I may say so, excellent director of our school. And we're going to be talking about some challenges that schools face. A lot of schools face, I'm sure, similar challenges: enrollment, economic issues, finding a place to do the learning. Those who are following our school know that we have a praise report that we just closed escrow on the purchase of this building. So we have a long-term home, and in our 19th year, that's a blessing that a lot of schools starting out don't have. What besides that, or in addition to that, what are some challenges that Trinity has faced over the years?
Gosh, well, thank you. Thank you for your kind words. And yes, we're very encouraged by the place that we're at now, 19 years into our journey with just closing escrow. We're very grateful for what that can mean for our community and future home, for students, and all that we hope we can do for the Lord in our community. But we certainly didn't start in this place. Our very first year, we were in a less than 2,000 square foot facility that had a center courtyard with 3 small rooms around it. One that we had little people in, that every other day it overflowed. The bathroom would overflow into the classroom. So our little second graders would be out in the courtyard for part of the afternoon almost every day.
The toilet overflowed into the classroom.
So
the classroom was no longer the classroom. The courtyard was the classroom.
Yes, because it was stinky for 7 and 8-year-olds and the teacher. And we, at that place, also had a little dog run for our entire playground, that we put one of those little school houses in plastic slide things. And, when they're only 3 feet tall at the most, you can do that. We were there for 2 or so years. Then we had a second campus we added to. And then at one point we had 3 campuses, all within a mile of each other. And that was a little crazy for my good driver insurance that year. That was rough on that. But one of the things that I'm grateful for, and for our community and for the people on our team, is that we knew what we were doing was facilities were important. We needed a place to do school, but yet it wasn't what made our school. It was what was going on inside the classroom for our little people that were quickly becoming big people and our community. And I just know with the challenges over the years, I love what Mark Batterson talks about in his circle of prayer. You don't give up, because you don't know when, if you give up, you might miss the blessing. So I always knew that we just have to keep showing up. The Lord will provide. He always has provided. And even in, more lean years, if we say enrollment was exactly where we had hoped or things shifted, people move in and out of California a lot, that's an impact. So we just kept doing the next thing for what we thought was best for our students and families and community, and the Lord has always provided.
And would you say that, so I'm hearing you talk about, sticking to it, about, showing up. I forget who said that 90% of life is showing up. It's be there and push through, be flexible. How has prayer not only helped you, because you said you started with the school with prayer and that calling, What have you learned? What are some things you've learned about trusting God in this process that maybe you would have not learned if you hadn't started a school?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, if we hadn't started the school and the Lord chosen to do what he's done, I can't imagine like all the people in the community that we know and have come to know and worked with and served alongside, family, students, like I wouldn't have known those people, and I'll get to know them in heaven.
Mm-hmm.
Like for eternity, because make no mistake, education is about eternity and reaching, souls for Christ, heart, mind, soul, and strength, and how we do that in serving. So, oh my gosh, our lives certainly would have been less full. And even though it's been, challenging at times, right? Mm-hmm. I wouldn't have foreseen if the Lord had told me some of the challenges we would have had, or that would have lasted as long as they would have, and told me prior, I probably would have not done some of it, right? Mm-hmm. And the one thing too for family, for people who are interested in like starting a school and things like that, one thing I have learned is a couple of things that it's never ideal. So it wasn't, it's never ideal to do the next thing that you think you need to do for students and or people or your school or whatever it is. It's never ideal. It's never necessarily the right time. For instance, when we opened Imago Dei or when we started the Logic School or even the high school, and I what was it? John Piper says that, hope and solutions are expensive. and you have to be willing to do them and then, trust the Lord, and not in like a flippant or any kind of way like that, but, as graciously and thoughtfully and as prayerfully as you can, do them. But it's never perfect, because it just didn't have been perfect when we said, oh, we're going to start a school, and we waited for everything to be in place, we wouldn't have done it, because I think we were a few months out from starting that first year, and I still didn't know where we were going to go. Right. We hadn't gotten a yes yet. I mean, we had asked so many.
God sort of reveals the stepping stones one at a time.
But I think you have to step out in faith first, and then he does that, right? He puts the stepping stone. It sure does. What is that? Is that Raiders of the Lost Ark?
I think so.
He steps out and then the stone appears. I don't know, one of those.
Yeah.
I'm dating myself.
Where there's the tests, and one of them is the test of faith. Yeah, and it's like you have to step before you feel maybe see isn't even the right analogy. Maybe you used to step before you feel the stepping stone that you didn't see and maybe still can't see.
Yeah, and he has never not provided in that regard.
Amazing. So what's next for Trinity? Trinity is still growing. It's still, it's got the same mission that it had at the beginning. But where do things go from here in this new home? What's next?
Gosh, what's next is we just get to keep doing what we're doing, hopefully as graciously and as well as possible, serving students and families, and get to dream and talk about things that we would like to do for our students and community, and without the burden of wondering where we're going to do it, because we do know that. And so we just keep on about the things that we are doing and hopefully do well for children in their learning, and our faculty has great ideas for reaching more people for classical Christian education. I think where we're located, we'll be able to serve families. We're in a good place for serving families that might come into our community. So I'm hopeful that we can just be about the business that we've been about the last 19 years and keep doing that well.
Very cool. Thank you so much, Liz Caddow, for being here in our inaugural episode of the Classical Academy podcast. And thanks for your thoughts and sharing your heart with us.
Thank you. Thank you for asking.
Thank you all for joining us on the very first Classical Academy podcast. This podcast is a service of Trinity Classical Academy here in Santa Clarita, California. Our producer is Shay Ramquist. Our audio engineer, Stephen Petrie. We would love to hear from you, what you want to hear more of, what stood out to you. Let's dialogue. You can contact us at podcast@TrinityClassicalAcademy.com or on social media. Look for TrinityU on Facebook and all the platforms. Let's keep pursuing virtue and wisdom little by little every day together. Thank you.